Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, I'm going to be taking you through what are, in my opinion, the best cards from the, well, brand new set Aetherdrift and the precons, and there's a lot of cards to go through and a lot of new exciting ones, a ton of new best cards. Let's jump into them. And we're going to be starting things off with the artifacts because that's, well, how Moxfield organizes things apparently. Anyways, first up, Adaptive Omni Tool. Great for artifact decks. It's an artifact that's good for artifacts, who knew? ++1 to the equipped creature for each artifact you control. This little equipment just costs 2 mana, only 3 to equip. And it says, whenever equipped creature attacks with the top 6 cards of your library, maybe an artifact card from among them put in your hand, the rest go on the bottom of your library in a random order. When it comes to the decks that might want to use this, I mean, obviously, artifacts. Yes, this is not only a giant, massive pump effect that can make even the teeniest, tiniest commander into a, well, probably 3, if not 2, maybe even a one-shot KO, or, you know, just other creatures as well. That being said, it also is a great card draw engine for you. Basically, you know, filtering off the top 6 cards, and you're probably going to hit an artifact if you're an artifact deck. That being said, also can be utilized in any kind of other deck that utilizes go-wide artifact strategies like treasures, clues, etc., etc. Next up, Broodheart Engine, a very good one as well. Artifact for 2 mana and Golgari. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1 by paying 4 and tapping and sacrificing it. Return target creature or vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield only at sorcery speed. Now, this one is great for self-mill strategies or reanimator strategies, and or both. This one is one where you get repeatable card selection with that surveil and getting things into your graveyard versus with Scry on the bottom of the library. That's much better for most decks out there. Getting things in your graveyard means you can reuse them, especially with this well-activated ability. Basically, reanimate something when you need to. But yeah, it's a lot of value to be had for self-mill or reanimation strategies. Next up, speaking of mill, River Churn Monument. My goodness, this amusement park frog is cool. Artifact for 2 in blue. Pay 1, tap any number of target players, each mills 2 cards. Cool. All right, so mill everyone, or mill you, or mill whoever you want. Exhaust for 4 mana, though. This is where things get really spicy. Tap any number of target players, each mill cards equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. This is a massive thing. I mean, basically Keening Stone, but pick any number of players. So, sure, if you've got, say, some flashback cards in your deck, or if you have a graveyard synergistic deck, self-mill deck, choose yourself within that. But, yeah, for most mill decks, it's like, okay, opponents, double up your mill. Absolutely huge. This can be a giant finisher for you, on top of just good value throughout the game, being able to mill consistently when you have that extra mana lying around. Next up, Lumbering World Wagon. Speaking of extra mana, World Wagon, if I could talk. Star 4 vehicle for 3 mana in green. Power is equal to the number of lands you control. So, of course, you're in green. That can be a massive number. On top of that, when it enters or attacks, you may search your library, basic land card on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle, and Scat Crew 4. So, at the very least, this is a 3 mana ramp spell, which is, yes, slow compared to what you want when it comes to your ramp spells typically. That being said, hey, it is repeatable, technically, because, again, it's on ETB and also on attack. Now, the crew cost is 4. You can definitely get there, though, at a certain point. And even if you're not building around actually crewing this up and swinging consistently, it is a good... Oh, someone just wiped the board? Okay, well, you took out all the creatures. All right, well, this is still around. It's a vehicle just staying in play, doing absolutely nothing threatening, right? Until it's too late. And all of a sudden, you get your commander back down, you crew this up, and you say, all right, swing for 12 at someone. Yay, no blockers! And also keep ramping while you're doing so. Next up, Monument to Endurance, an artifact for 3. When you discard a card, choose one that has been chosen this turn. Draw a card, create a treasure token. Each opponent loses 3 life. This is massive. This is huge. If you have a cycling deck, you are giddy right now. You're like, oh my goodness, yes, please throw that in the deck. Absolutely. Doubling up on your draw from cycling type effects, essentially, or looting effects, essentially, making it into card advantage versus just card selection, getting you treasure tokens to get you mana back. Again, with wheel effects too, this does give you all 3. If you say discard, 3 or more cards, all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I get all 3. I draw a card, I get a treasure, and everyone else drains. That's huge. So yeah, discard decks wheel decks, cycling decks, anything that consistently discard cards, you're going to get a ton of value out of this. Speaking of drawing cards, though, Thopter Fabricator. We've seen a couple of other ones like this lately, and this might be the best of them so far. A 4/4 vehicle with flying for 3, I should say, and crew 2. One even cheaper than I remember. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. That is massive. That is huge. That is repeatable creature token production. That is quite easy for certain strategies to get on every single turn, not just your own. Once you're set up properly, again, even if you just have looting effects where it's like, okay, I'm not going up in card advantage, or as cast like a brainstorm, technically you're only going up by like, 1 card in card advantage, or none, essentially, if you are, again, looting, but you are drawing cards, and when you do so, and you get your second one, you are triggering this. So make a bunch of Thopters. Ironically, that can, crew this, too. So there you go. A big Thopter. Small Thopter screwing a big Thopter. But yeah, being able to just have this on an artifact, it is a bit easier to keep in play versus the previous ones like Emrakul's Messenger, I think is one of the names, and there's another one's like a wizard of some sort. But basically, those are on creatures. So yeah, because it's a vehicle, it can dodge a lot of board wipes that otherwise wouldn't be able to be dodged. And a 4/4 flyer is not that bad either. Next up, Thunderingus Velocipede, a 5/5 vehicle with trample for 3 mana in green, crew 3. Each other vehicle and creature you control enters an additional counter on it if its mana value is 4 or less. Otherwise, enters with 3 additional counters on it. This is massive for, well, of course, vehicle decks. Yes, most definitely. I mean, any of the vehicles, you can kind of say, like, yeah, vehicles should consider it. Yes, probably. That being said, when it comes to +1 counter builds, this is huge. This is low the ground again, 3 mana. Get it out there. Get extra free counters on everything coming into play, no matter what it is, again, vehicle or creature. And if it's a big creature or vehicle, mana value 4 or less, 4 or greater, I should say 5 or greater, then all of a sudden you're getting 3 counters on it, which is massive. That is huge. Have fun with that. So essentially, you are able to get an absurd amount of counters. And again, typically with +1 counter builds or proliferate builds, you really just care about getting that first counter on things. Because once you get that first counter on things, you can go absolutely crazy with countering doubling effects. You can do crazy things with, again, proliferate effects. A lot of value to be had. On top of this being a, 5/5 trampler with crew 3. So that's pretty good too. So a very solid card. Next up, Crypt Crawler Chariot, a 5/5 vehicle with menace for 4 mana in black. Whenever you discard one or more cards, create that many tap 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. It's got crew 2. This is absolutely huge. Again, when you first start reading it, you're like, oh, it's going to be limited. It says 1 or more. Yeah, but it gives you that many. So it doesn't matter that it's limited, essentially, with the 1 or more. It's just basically whenever it's got a card, make a 2/2. So all of a sudden, again, whether you, again, have a cycling strategy where it's like, okay, every time you cycle, you make a tap 2/2. Amazing. Every time you, again, use like a looting effect, cool, make a 2/2. Every time you use a rummaging effect, make a 2/2. Every time you wheel, you're going to be making like 7 creatures when you do so. Again, assuming you're discarding like 7, drawing 7, discarding 7, drawing 7 with a wheel strategy. Absolutely amazing. So again, vehicles, wheels, discard. What's not to love about this? Cycling. Moving on. Salvation Engine. Yeah, go wide artifact creature strategies. Oh my goodness. A slam dunk in those. Tempered Steel type build. 6/10 vehicle for 5 mana in total in white. Other artifact creatures control get +2/+2, so a nice anthem there. On top of that, though, whenever this creature attacks, return to 1 target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's got crew 6. So yeah, it's a hefty crew cost, but again, you just have like 2 1/1 servos in play even again. They get pumped by this, and they each have 3 power then. Root up with 2 of those. So yeah, this is a great card to swing, and all of a sudden get an absurd amount of value out of that trigger. Bringing back any artifact out of your graveyard. Again, no restriction on that. No like, oh, it's got to be mana value this or whatnot. Or, oh, if you hit an opponent. No. Just on attack. Bring something massive back out of your graveyard. Obviously, artifact decks, go wide artifact creature strategies are going to love this. Radiant Lotus. My goodness. This might be the most expensive card out of the entire set. If I had to guess right now, I'm going to say it's probably going to be this one. Artifact for 6. Tap, sacrifice 1 or more artifacts. Choose a color. Target player adds 3 mana to the chosen color for each artifact sacrificed this way. You don't even have to sacrifice this to do it. It's basically like Black Lotus, but everything becomes a Black Lotus that you have. All of your artifacts are now Black Lotus. You just tap this, sacrifice any of your artifacts, and you get 3 mana for every single one of those artifacts you sacrifice. That is huge. I mean, I say you, but you could give it to another player if you really want to. So there is like that, actually kind of like flexible aspect to it, I guess. Where you're like, hey, opponent, you need some extra mana, right? Let's make a deal, all right? Yeah, we're all in trouble right now that other players over there do some crazy things. I think you said you have a tutor, right? So I'll give you the mana to go use that tutor and go get a Wrath and take out the board. Cool, do so. That being said, though, yeah, I mean, it doesn't even specify non-token artifacts, of course, so sacrifice, again, all your artifacts that even want to be sacrificed, but also sacrifice, say, treasures, clues, whatever, servos, and all of a sudden make an absurd amount of mana and win. Have fun. And again, you can sacrifice this if you need the extra 3 mana boost from it. Finally, though, in our artifacts, though, Demonic Junker, a crazy good new card. 4/3 vehicle for 7 mana, but you're never going to pay that. Affinity for artifacts, that's why. When this creature enters, for each player, destroy up to 1 target creature the player controls. If a creature you control destroyed this way, put 2 counters on this vehicle. It's got crew too. So this can be a 6/5 for basically just 1 mana, which is lovely. And you can lose a creature, but again, certain decks out there, like Aristocrat style decks, actually want to lose their own creatures in certain ways or get them, taken out. So there you go. Congratulations, you did that. But this is on an ETB. This is, for an ETB strategy, absolutely incredible because all of a sudden, if you just keep blinking this again and again and again, or like with a Feign Death type effect, if it's a creature and it's about to die, you bring it back, and that ETB hits again. It's not on a cast trigger. It's not like ETB plus a cast, requirement. No. It's just on ETB. Destroy a creature every single player controls. If you want to destroy one of yours, cool, do it. If you don't do it. But yeah, it's an amazing card that... yeah, it's going to be quite good in those kinds of strategies. Blank, artifacts, and that kind of stuff as well. Okay, moving on to creatures. And ironically, again, we have artifact creatures that sometimes aren't creatures with vehicles, and then just an artifact creature with Market Back Walker. There we go. A 0/0 construct for XX that says enters battlefield, X counters on it, pay 4, put a counter on this creature. When this creature dies, draw a card for each counter on it. Basically, Hanger Back Walker / Walking Ballista, but with card draw instead. Yeah, so not really combo-y Walking Ballista is, and it's probably better than Hanger Back Walker because drawing a ton of cards versus making a bunch of 1/1s, both good. This is just it is sitting and waiting, massive card draw for you that, of course, in a counter strategy, in a big mana strategy, in an activated ability strategy, in a, proliferate strategy, very easy to get a lot of counters on this, and all of a sudden, when it gets popped, you take it out, and you draw an absurd amount of cards, on top of this just being a good big threat for you. Next up, Gas Guzzler, a 2/1 Vampire Rogue for a single black mana. Aetherdrift fans out there, look out, because we've got another low-to-the-ground vampire to consider. This creature enters tap, max speed, pay a single black mana, sacrifice the creature vehicle, draw a card. So yes, again, max speed. The whole start your engine thing is a bit of a parasitic mechanic if you really want to build around it entirely, depending on if your commander does it or not, if it's low to the ground or not. That being said, you might just be okay, I'm willing to, spin the wheel with this one with Edgar Markov, or Vampire Tribal Commander, essentially, or a Rogue Commander. So if I get this out early, again, potentially turn 1, I'm getting a lot of damage on my opponents. Again, a 2/1 early like this. On top of that, I am getting my speed up. And eventually, I will be having this as an amazing sacrifice outlet. Just 1 mana, sacrifice a creature, draw a card. See, Aristocrat style decks can consider it as well. It's a very interesting card for sure. Next up, Embalmed Ascendant, kind of similar in your considerations with this one as well. A 1/2 zombie for 3 mana in Warzop. Start your engines. When it enters, make a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Max speed. Whenever a creature controlled dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So being able to utilize this as a, token producer is great. Again, ETB, keep that in mind. Ways to use and abuse it. Feign Death type effects, blink effects, etc., etc. At the very least, though, it's 2 zombies for the price of 1. So that's quite nice. And on top of that, of course, the giant upside of... hey, once you get to max speed, which again is not hard to get to for the decks that you have this in, once you have this out, it does take some time, yes, but you'll have draining effects, you'll have ways to get creatures through, you can get opponents to lose life so that you can actually get to that max speed, and once you do, this is just another Zulport Cutthroat type effect, which can be absolutely massive. So again, Aristocrat strategies, also zombie strategies, of course. Next up, though, Howl Squad Heavy. Oh my goodness, the price on this one is going to be quite hefty. A 2/3 Goblin Mercenary with start your engines for 3 mana in red. Other goblins you control have haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. That token attacks this combat if able. Max speed, tap red for every goblin you control. This is huge for a lot of different reasons, mainly goblins. Yeah, if you have a goblin deck, this is... I don't like to say auto-include, but it is a slam dunk in that deck most of the time. First of all, giving your goblins haste. Yeah, you get this down the turn before you get Kranko down. You're like, oh, great, cool, I can activate Kranko right away. That is massive. That is huge. On top of that, this gives you more and more goblins every single turn. 1 goblin this turn, the next turn 1 goblin, the next turn a goblin. You just keep building up all those goblins. So this, obviously in a Kranko deck especially, is absurd. And then obviously once you get to that max speed, Oh my goodness. Again, Kranko tapping for like 20 goblins apiece, and then this tapping for 20 mana. Oh my goodness. And again, with Kranko basically doubling up your mana every single time with it. Absolutely crazy. Especially when you consider that if you use threaten effects with your Kranko deck too, like untapping it. I'm not just trying to mention just Kranko, but Kranko is the most popular goblin commander for a reason, and this is absurd in that deck. Have fun. Next up. Stride Hanger Automaton, a 1/4 construct for 3 mana. Thopters you control a ++1. If one of our artifact tokens we created under your control, those tokens plus an additional Thopter are created instead by flying. Lovely. So basically, again, any kind of a strategy that is making artifact tokens, whether they are creature tokens, blue tokens, treasure tokens, whatever you're making, cool. Make more tokens. And again, they're not just 1/1s, they are 2/2 flyers because of that pump effect as well. So that can be absolutely amazing for you. And I guess Shapeshifter Tribal as well could work in that too. Anytime you have got a creature that's like, all right, not other creatures get +1, but like Thopters in general, because if you make this into a Thopter, then there's strategies with it, okay? Anyways, yes, artifact tokens, extra tokens. What's not to love about that? Next up, tutoring. What's not to love about that too? 2/2 Human Wizard for 3 mana in blue. When this creature enters, you may search life for an artifact card with mana value 4 or 5. Reveal it, put in your hand, then shuffle. We have finally completed the cycle. Again, we've got all the other ones like Trinket Mage, Tribute Mage, all those essentially like 1, 2, 3, I think 5 and 6 plus, I think, or not 5. This is 5, obviously. 6 plus were all of them. And now we've got 4 and 5 covered with this one. A great ETB that we can use and abuse. And of course, yeah, there are some absolutely disgusting, absolutely amazing artifacts to tutor for at 4 and 5. I mean, just name one off the top of the head. Alhamrad's Archive, a great card. Have fun with that, and some combo pieces as well if you really need to. Moving on, Pack Doll Terror, a 3/4 toy for 4 mana. Whenever this creature or another artifact you control enters, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Okay, yet another Blood Artist effect, basically. Wizards, we're getting too many of these. Please slow down. But yeah, essentially another Blood Artist type effect. This one is on ETB, and this one is on artifacts specifically. So yes, if you have a treasure strategy, prosper people, consider it. Because yeah, if you're making a ton of treasures, if you're making a ton of artifacts, you are draining your opponents quite quickly against when they come into play, not even when they leave play. So yeah, artifact decks out there, treasure decks out there, any kind of an artifact token generating deck, consider it. Or if you have maybe a blank deck with a bunch of artifacts like Riptide Gearhulk. My goodness, Wizards, did you have to make this one in this way? A 2/5 construct for 5 mana in Azorius Double Strike Prowess. Already good right there. That being said, most importantly, when it enters, for each opponent, put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its owner's library, third from the top. Not even bounce back to the hand. This is literally like put it in your library. Which, at a certain point, you're basically, is it called mind locking? I can't remember the term exactly, but you are mind locking players out of the game. You are essentially, again, in a blink strategy, especially blinking this again and again and again and again. Very original, everyone. Blinking it again and again and again, and all of a sudden just bouncing everyone's non-land permanents back into their library again, third from the top. The next 2 cards that they draw, yes, are going to be different than the ones we're bouncing in, but after that, they're just going to be drawing the things that they already had in play. So we are locking them into the exact same cards, and unless they have an answer for this in our strategy, they're basically locked out of the game, and they lose. It's a gross, disgusting, crazy good card. $25 right now. It's probably going to be that price or maybe even more. Moving on to enchantments, though, we've got a lot of great ones. First up, Renewed Solidarity. Enchantment for 3 mana in white. As it enters, choose a creature type. Creature control the chosen type, get +1/+0. Beginning of your end step. For each token, you control the chosen type. Then enter the battlefield this turn. Create a token that's a copy of it. Basically, hey, you know what's good? Yeah, making tokens and doubling it up. So yes, if you have any kind of a tribal strategy that makes tokens, maybe a commander that makes tokens themselves, you're like, oh, okay, on my turn, I just double up my token production, while this also is a decent anthem, again, +1/+0 for all those tokens and all my creatures that are that type. Lovely. Yeah, so if you have any kind of a tribal strategy that makes tokens in any which way, you're gonna want this card. Next up, Unstoppable Plan. Yes, pretty unstoppable itself. Enchant for 3 mana in blue. At the beginning of your end step, untap all non-land permanents you control. This is like baby Seedborn Muse, but on an enchantment instead of on a creature. Again, I talked about earlier, hey, sometimes when things are on creatures, they can be a bit easier to deal with. When they're on enchantments, which are a hardier type to actually deal with, in my opinion, it is going to stay in play a bit longer on average, and this is a great way to just keep getting value out of all of your non-land permanents. Again, just even mana rocks. You're like, oh, okay, cool. I just get to untap my mana rocks at the end of my turn. Great, I'll do that and get free mana for my opponent's turns. Fantastic. But of course, if you have any kind of, creatures that tap with abilities or any other non-land permanents that tap with abilities, have fun with that. A lot of value to be had. Next up, on Wings of Gold, a slam dunk in many decks out there. Enchantment for 4 mana in white. Creatures you control that are zombies and or tokens get +1 and have flying. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 white zombie creature token. First of all, if you have any kind of a strategy that deals with cards leaving your graveyard, lovely. If you've got like flashback, if you've got like reanimate, if you've got like, I don't know, exiling things out of your graveyard, Ketramos, then yes, this can be a great card to just make an army out of nowhere that again are just 1/1s, but they're basically 2/2 flyers too. Again, they are zombies and they are tokens. So this is great for that, but of course just also great in general for any kind of a token strategy with creatures. That's basically it. It's like, okay, I give my tokens not only a pump effect, but also evasion as well. So that is absolutely huge. And of course, yeah, if you've got zombie tribal, you are giddy right now with excitement because you're like, yeah, chuck that in there, and now all of a sudden my zombies just fly through and hit my opponents. Amazing. But when it comes to amazingness with enchantments, March of the World Ooze might take the cake. An enchantment for 6 mana in green. Creatures you control base power down to 6/6 and are oozing to other types. On top of that, though, because that wasn't enough, whenever opponent casts a spell, if it's not their turn, you create a 3/3 green elfin creature token, which is also going to be a 6/6 ooze too. So basically, punish opponents for casting things, again, not on their turn. It can be anyone else's turn, does not matter. It doesn't have to be yours. Make a bunch of 6/6s with that, but also just literally, do you have a go wide strategy? Do you have a go wide strategy with creature tokens or just like literally just putting a bunch of tiny creatures in play? Cool. Now they're all 6/6s. They're massive, absolutely huge. Again, you play your Avengers Zendikar and you're like, oh, I make 7, I have 7 lands, so I make 7 plants, and now they're all 6/6 instead of 0/1s or whatever they are. Absolutely disgusting, absolutely gross. If you got a commander that cares about its own power as well, absolutely crazy. And of course, ooze tribal, yeah, or elephant, yeah, sure, that too. But yeah, absolutely crazy. When it comes to instants, just one I'm going to be highlighting here with Defend the Rider. Now, Tamiyo's safekeeping sees a good amount of play. I think last time I checked, like 6% of eligible decks, which is a good chunk. Instant for a single green mana, very similar to that one. Choose one target permanent control against hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. That is huge. Create a 1/1 pilot that does the whole pilot thing, crewing and whatnot is your other option. That being said, both good options. The one that you care about the most usually is going to be, okay, protect my thing, give it hexproof and indestructible, which is typically good enough to survive nearly any situation. So basically, again, hey, 1 mana protect my most important permanent on the board, most likely my commander. Great, I'll do that. If not, it can act as like a mini fog in a way, like, oh no, my opponent's giant creature swinging at me. Does it have trample? No. Does it have flying or anything like that? Any evasion? No, it's just giant. Okay, I pay 1 mana to make a 1/1 that blocks it. Yeah, you don't even have to care about having vehicles in the deck or mounts. It does not matter. If you do, great. That's gravy on top of that because it can crew things. That being said, just be like, okay, I make a 1/1. It blocks. Awesome. Or making a 1/1 before your turn, like essentially with a like Jetmir strategy. Like I have to get to a certain threshold of creatures. That's great for it too. Or a populate strategy. Great. That being said, at the very least, again, just 1 mana protect my thing from nearly anything. That's huge. Moving on, when it comes to sorceries, well, the first one I'm going to highlight is Full Throttle. Wizards reprint every single one of the extra combat spells. Ever since Ishin was made, they all got really, really expensive. That being said, this is going to be very expensive too. I think it's around $12 so right now. Sorcery for 6 mana in red. After this main phase, there are 2 additional combat phases. At the beginning of each combat this turn, untap all creatures that attack this turn. I know they've got to write it out, but can't they just like easyify the card and say like 2 extra combats? Yep. Just say that. Okay, cool. But yeah, 2 extra combats essentially, which is absolutely absurd. Again, game ending in some ways, where again, opponents are doing math when they're like, okay, I think I can survive this turn. All right, I'm gonna, I think I've got good enough defenses. We're good, right? Okay, pass the turn. You're like, I attack. Oh, well, okay, that hurt a lot. Okay, but I think we're gonna be fine. Okay, I attack 2 more times. What? No! Yeah, you're gone. So yeah, just literally at a base level with like an attack strategy, that's gonna be crazy. Number 2, of course, like I already mentioned, like Ishin, hey, do you have like a combat trigger kind of thing? Like attacking combat triggers or combat damage triggers or just like, there's a lot of cool ways to take advantage of this. And yeah, there's a reason why extra combat spells are very expensive these days. And this is just, you get 2 in 1. Have fun. My goodness, well worth that 6 mana. Next up, though, Voyage Home. Sorcery for 7 mana, but you're never going to pay that in Azorius. Affinity for artifacts. You draw 3 cards, gain 3 life. What's it called? Thoughtcast is the other one, essentially. That's like 5 mana, but basically pay 1. This is kind of like the big brother of that. You get to pay 1 extra mana. Oh, darn. Okay, I have to pay 1 extra mana. I get to draw 3, gain 3. It is at sorcery speed, so do keep that in mind, and that does actually, you know, matter. It does matter, absolutely. When it comes to card draw, you usually want the flexibility. But for an artifact strategy, if you can consistently ensure that you're going to have 5 in play and you can just pay 2 for that, it's probably going to be worth it to definitely consider and try out to be able to draw 3 and sure gain 3 life. That's nice as well. But the draw 3 is what really matters. For just 2 mana, that can be huge. Now, when it comes to lands, one massive card that I did not see coming is a Cursed Duneyard. Basically, Swarm Yard, but for undead things, I guess? I don't know. Land that can tap for a color, pay 2, tap, regenerate target, Shade, Skeleton, Spectre, Spirit, Vampire, Wraith, or Zombie. Now, there are a couple on here that are like, they don't matter all that much, no offense. But yeah, Shades, Skeletons, Spectres, Wraiths. Okay, like those are things. But yeah, hey, spirits, yeah, that matters a good amount for tribal. Oh, vampires, my gosh, and zombies, yeah. This is basically, I'm not going to say an auto-include because I don't like the term all that much, and there's definitely reasons to include things and reasons not to include things, but it's going to be hard to against not including this in like a mono black zombie deck. It's going to be like, I just don't feel like it's a good card. No, you're wrong. It's a good card. It's a very good card. It's a free way to save one of your most important things, most likely your commander. And again, even if it's not a tribal deck, if your commander is any of these types, Shade, Skeleton, Spectre, Spirit, Vampire, Wraith, or Zombie, it's relevant. This is just a free way to save your commander. So if you're in, say, 3 colors or less, you can probably justify including a utility land in your deck like this one, especially if you're like 1 color. You're like, it's gonna be hard to argue against like, no, I need every single swamp I can get. I mean, maybe if you have like Cabal Coffers kind of things, but like still like, or Cabal Coffers, which ones cares about the lands? I don't know. Anyways, it's a very good card. Yes, it's just a land that can save important creatures for you. It's huge, absolutely huge. And then next up, Muruganda Raceway, a land that has start your engines, tap for a colors, max speed, tap for 2. Again, when it comes to utility land, this is pretty good because it's just basically, okay, I tap for 1 at a very least. I don't have to come play tapped or anything like that. No, I'm not helping you fix your mana, so there is that downside. That being said, at some point, most likely, not too many turns, if I get this down turn 1 especially, I get to tap for 2. I'm just ramping just by having this in play. So, yeah, it's not like Temple of False God, which, no offense to players out there who like Temple of False God, I personally do not. I do not think it's worth it because there are definitely times when you get stuck with it and you don't have enough lands in play and then your game's just ruined. This does not do that to you. This says, okay, I'll start off by giving you 1 mana, and eventually I just give you 2. So you just get free extra mana 1 turn just by getting through on your opponents or having them lose life in other ways. Yeah, I mean, a colorless deck, it's going to be really hard to argue against this, just in a colorless deck in general, outside of price with all these, okay? But also just like, hey, if you need like some like land ramp in a weird way or whatever, you're like, you know what? I've got like a group slug type strategy where I'm like, oh yeah, I can consistently get damage into my opponents, make them lose life. You might be able to consider this too and be like, yeah, I can do that pretty quickly. So yeah, have fun. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. Comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.